We just saw there on stage Dr. Christopher Bishop, Distinguished Scientist at Microsoft Research in Cambridge, England. Chris is the co-chair of the summit, along with Dr. Evelyn Villegas of Microsoft Research here in Redmond, Washington. We're about 5,000 miles apart, but we are live online together right now. Chris, great opening keynote there. Give us your take, what you took away from Andrew Blake's presentation about machines being able to see.
Yes, absolutely, Chris. That was a fantastic start to the Machine Learning Summit. Andrew Blake gave a superb keynote talk. I think it was really exactly the sort of thing we're looking for this summit, because he talked about first of all, the intersection between machine learning and computer vision, and that's one of the things we're trying to achieve with this summit, is sort of bring together people from different disciplines and have them communicate with each other and get engaged in interesting discussions about the future of the field. But it was also very good too, because he posed some very interesting and thought-provoking challenges. He talked about essentially two different ways that we might use machine learning to solve problems in computer vision. And I guess there are sort of these two camps, and some people favor one approach, some people favor another. And so it was a very thought-provoking talk. I think we'll get some really good discussion going during the break. So I was delighted with that start to the summit.
All right, Chris, well, let's back up. You are one of the co-chairs of the event here. Can you give us some background about the summit itself and what you're hoping to accomplish at the end of all of this?
Sure. So the reason we're having this summit now, of course, is that the field of machine learning has sort of exploded in popularity just in the last couple of years. So one of the reasons for that, of course, is this so-called data revolution. So if you look back over the last 40 years of the computing revolution, it's really been driven by Moore's law, by the fact that the number of transistors on a silicon chip has been doubling every 2 years or so. And what we're seeing today is a new kind of Moore's law, a sort of Moore's law of data. So people have observed already that the amount of data in the world that's being stored is doubling about every couple of years, just like with the old Moore's law. But what's more is that people think this could continue for many years or many decades to come. So as the quantity of data in the world increases, so too do the opportunities to mine and interpret that data in order to extract useful value, which might be commercial value, or it might be value for society. And of course, it's the business of machine learning to interpret and understand data and to extract information from data. So I think that sort of data explosion is one of the reasons why machine learning has really been taking off in the last few years.
Now, obviously, we just heard Andrew Blake's fascinating keynote there, but I understand you've got some other really top-notch keynote presenters planned, right?
Absolutely. Tomorrow we have Herman Hauser. He's one of the co-founders of ARM. So his company has sold more processors in a year than there are people on the planet. And I think one of the things he's probably going to be highlighting is the fact that we're going to see a tremendous growth in the number of sort of low-cost, low-power embedded devices over the coming years, devices which are connected to the internet. So they'll be sensing the world in all sorts of ways and feeding data up to data centers. So mobile phones are sort of an example of this, but it'll be your refrigerator and all sorts of everyday gadgets and devices will have little processors in them. They'll be connected to the internet. They'll be gathering information, sending it up to data centers. And that will contribute to this data explosion. So that's one of the factors which is driving this sort of exponential growth in the amount of data. So we're really looking forward to Herman's talk tomorrow. And then coming up very soon, of course, we have a keynote from Judea Pearl. Now, Judea is a real hero in the field of machine learning and statistics. He was one of the people who pioneered the idea of using what we call graphical models to describe probabilistic models of the world, and some very clever algorithms. We call them message passing algorithms, or belief propagation, which allow us to apply these models to sort of big real-world applications. But more recently, he's been very interested in this problem of causality. So we all know that there's a correlation between, let's say, smoking cigarettes and getting cancer. But the fact that two things are correlated doesn't tell you which one causes the other. So there's a very deep challenge of how do you discover causal effects, which things cause other things, from observational data. So we're very excited about his keynote talk.
So as you mentioned, Judea coming up later today, and you mentioned Herman's tomorrow. That will be available on demand, so folks can look for that. You sort of foreshadowed this one in the beginning, but I want to circle back. The idea of teaching machines to do human-like things, understanding data, making independent decisions. It's been around for a long time, and certainly in science fiction movies, which sometimes didn't end well. But why is there such a flurry of research in this area now? What has changed?
Right. So one of the things I mentioned is the data explosion. I think something else which is sort of driving interest in the field are these so-called natural user interfaces. So, for years we struggled along with sort of, the mouse and the keyboard, and that's great, and I'm sure they'll be around for years to come. But we're seeing a lot more interest now in new kinds of interfaces based on speech recognition, on sort of gesture recognition, interfaces that allow people to communicate with computers in ways that are much more like the way people communicate with each other. But the challenge in getting those types of interface to work is the sort of the variability. So if I press a key on a keyboard, it's quite unambiguous which key I've pressed. But if I sort of gesture to the screen or something like that, then there's much more variability. Every time I gesture, I'll do it slightly differently. And if somebody else makes a gesture, they'll do it a bit differently again. And so we have to cope with all this variability. And it turns out the best way to do that is to have the computer learn from example data, to see lots of different examples of these gestures, and then it can learn the regularity and the patterns, and it's able to recognize the gestures again in the future. So that's been another sort of big factor that's driving this explosion of interest in machine learning. But really, Chris, one of the things we're trying to do with this summit is not just have a big machine learning conference, but do something which I think is really quite unique, which is, first of all, to bring together people from many different disciplines. So we have, of course, machine learning researchers here. We have people like Andrew Blake from the field of computer vision. We have people from speech. We have, Judea coming from statistics and causality. Herman coming from hardware and microprocessors and so on. People coming from lots of different disciplines. So it's very different, I think, in spirit to a traditional research conference where you get people in a particular discipline all come together. This is very much broader. And I think the other difference compared to a sort of a regular research conference is that we're really asking people to step back a little bit from the chalk face and to think a little bit less about the particular projects they're working on and ask themselves, what are the big issues that face machine learning over the next decade? What challenges, which if we solve them, would really sort of unlock and accelerate the impact of machine learning in the sort of the years and the decades ahead? So we're trying to be quite strategic and step back.
This is the 2013 Machine Learning Summit. As you mentioned, things are a little bit broader this year. We are doing this live online here. I'm in Redmond, Washington. You're about 5,000 miles and change away in Paris. You have a couple hundred people there in Paris attending the event in person, but the online audience, these folks watching right now, really are magnifying the reach of the summit. What are your expectations, your hopes perhaps, of our online audience here today?
Right. Well, I think for both the physical audience here and for the online audience, what we really want to do with this summit is stimulate people to think about those grand challenges, think about those big research problems, which would, whose solution would really unlock some of the potential of machine learning. And I think there's always a tendency, isn't there, to think about the current research project and sort of the next publication and the particular application that we're working on today. And so I think, one of my hopes from the Machine Learning Summit is really encourage people just to step back and reflect on the field as a whole, think strategically about where it's going, and ideally we'll identify some key challenges, and in the years ahead, the effect of the Machine Learning Summit will be to sort of shape and redefine some of those research directions, and the ultimate goal, the ultimate success for the Machine Learning Summit really will be that some of the capabilities of machine learning are accelerated and some of the benefits come along a lot earlier than they might have done otherwise.
Obviously, a lot to soak up, to take in over the couple of days here. It's hard to boil it down for you, but what are you looking forward to learning and to gathering?
Well, for me, the thing that I'm most looking forward to learning are the things that I don't expect, the things that I can't tell you about now because I haven't heard them yet. So really, it's the fact that we've got an amazing lineup of participants and speakers here at this event. Some people I know very well, some people I've never met before. So I think the thing that I'm most excited about over the next couple of days is those things that I didn't anticipate, that chance conversation over a cup of coffee when somebody tells me about an interesting research problem or a new direction or something that I wasn't aware of. So for me, that'll be I think the most exciting highlight.
Well, Chris, thanks so much for your time and enjoy yourself there in the remainder of the summit. We'll be watching and listening.